in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s were creation scientists. Now, some were wrong in some of their theories. I understand that, okay? And we need to always allow for that possibility that we may be wrong and be willing to change and alter what we believe in light of the facts. As I mentioned earlier, if it could be proven the universe was not billions of years old, as I believe it clearly can be proven, then evolution would have to modify their theory to fit within the time work of 8 to 10,000 years maximum, which of course could not happen. So I would say there is, am I answering the question right? What? Read it to me one more time, if you would, please.
If I have the right question, is there anything that evolutionists know for sure, not just theory?
No, there is not. Dr. Ropp, I believe, is the curator at the museum in British Museum of Natural History, the largest fossil collection in the world, asked that question to the Chicago symposium of famous evolutionists from all over the place. He said, "Do any of you know anything for sure about evolution?" Long period of silence. Finally, one man stood up and he said, "I know one thing for sure. We shouldn't teach it in high school." That was his result. No, there has never been any empirical evidence offered for evolution. They always claim they have it. I would love to see it. And if you read a whole library full of books this quarter, that's... Whew, I read a lot, but I can't go that far. I try to read a lot, and I'm willing to read anything by anybody. I'm willing to look at all the evidence from both sides, and I have never seen any empirical testable evidence. That's why on the back of my business card, I offer $10,000 for anybody with any empirical evidence, a legitimate standing offer of 4 years now. If you've got some evidence, please show it to me. Let's put it to the test. Let's show me life evolving from non-life. Let's do it in the laboratory. Miller certainly didn't. He made a few simple amino acids. That's building the building blocks. He didn't make a cell, certainly nothing that reproduces itself. We've never seen an animal change to any other kind of animal. It has never been observed in the fossil record, and it's not happening today. Chimpanzees today are still having babies, and they're still chimpanzees. Nothing changes.
Okay. I'm going to throw at you, Dr. Hovind, again, a series that I think are all related. And I'm not sure if I can summarize, so let me just quickly read these. They're all kind of the same question in my mind. If there is a creator and he or she created, why would the creator make something like an appendix, a human organ which is useless and even dangerous? Why is there certain useless anatomical, why are there certain useless anatomical parts of the body, such as the coccyx, the remnants of a tail, and useless muscles that are gradually disappearing? Isn't it true that 80 to 90% of our enzymes are also found in other animals? For example, pig insulin works in diabetic people. And isn't this evidence that we are biologically related? If human beings aren't related to apes, why do we have the muscles which gorillas and chimpanzees use to oppose their great toe and small toe? There's an anatomist here. They're called the opponents hallucis and the opponents digiti minimi. Sorry, it's not minimus, it's minimi. I happen to be an anatomist. Even though we can't make these motions, why is the bone and joint structure of our great toe like that of our thumb instead of like that of our other toes if we didn't evolve from animals which could oppose their great toes like chimpanzees and gorillas can? I think that's it.
That's it?
Did I do too many on you?
No.
I think the question is, why do we have evidence of things that would be evolutionarily remainders of things we don't use anymore?
Okay, I think the vestigial organ argument, of course, certainly does not prove evolution at all. That is, again, examples of losing something, not gaining something, which would be the opposite of evolution if they did exist. When the human anatomy was first being discussed and discovered back several hundred years ago, they had a list of 180 vestigial organs. The tailbone was one, the coccyx, the different muscles in the body, the appendix. I don't know of very many reputable doctors that would say there are any vestigial organs. To my knowledge, there's no such thing as a vestigial organ still on the list. It simply was a lack of our understanding. For years, they thought the pituitary gland was a vestigial organ, something we did not need, which certainly you do. The coccyx, the tailbone, is definitely not a vestigial organ. There are some definite uses for it. It holds a number of different muscles that are useful for different functions. Break yours sometime and try to sit down and you'll see. And again, losing a tail would be an example of a loss of information, not a gain. A tail would be a handy thing to have. So vestigial organs do not exist in the first place. And I was very disappointed that Dr. Richardson referred to vestigial organs in the embryonic stage. The ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny theory was disproven 50 years ago. The human baby never has gill slits. They are different folds of skin that develop into different parts of the respiratory and hearing tract. The baby never can breathe through them. Some of you have several chins. Some of you fat folks, you cannot breathe through any of them except the top one. The fact that the baby embryo looks like it has a tail, it simply isn't fully developed yet. The argument from ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny is the justification for abortion. After all, it's just a fish or just an amphibian. The baby does not go through the stages of evolution during development. It is 100% human the instant it is conceived. And to terminate the life by an outsider from that moment on...
Okay, excuse me, we are off topic.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Richardson.
Embryonically, we do have gill slits. They are vestigial. By definition, vestigial is useless. So, of course, we don't breathe through them. They are remnants of our ancestry. The ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny has been disproven. We do not pass through our ancestral stages, but that has nothing to do with our continuing to show some of these vestigial organs because we are not subject to natural selection as strongly in the womb as we are once we come out of the womb. So when we're in the womb, we are protected, and there is not selection to get rid of some of these useless structures that we don't use. Vestigial, by definition, is non-usable, so of course you don't breathe through them in the womb. But pharyngeal gill slits do give rise to structures of the ear, structures of the jaw. Embryologically, they correspond very well to the pharyngeal gill slits of our ancestors. So we have many vestigial organs. Vestigial, by definition, is useless. So.
Okay, I didn't just happen to pick this one out. It addresses the same thing, and maybe you can just say, I already answered this, but it provides some information toward that. You mentioned that the pharyngeal gill slits are vestigial, but modern embryology has proved this wrong, as Dr. Ashley Montague, an anthropologist, stated, quote, "The theory of recapitulation was destroyed in 1921 by Professor Walter Gerstang in a famous paper, since when no respectable biologist has ever used the theory of recapitulation because it was utterly unsound, created by a Nazi-like preacher named Haeckel. To whom do you go for your source of research on embryology?" I see two questions in here. Is it true that no respectable biologist has ever used the theory of recapitulation? And to whom do you go for your source of research on embryology?
Okay, I go to my embryology classes, and I go to my readings of embryology when I talk about embryological origins. And I see that I've confused people by using the pharyngeal gill slits as my example. I did not mean to imply that I adhere to this old ancient theory of ontogeny recapitulating phylogeny. Stephen Jay Gould wrote a book about this subject in which he very thoroughly took care of any vestigial doubts about ontogeny recapitulating phylogeny. So my source for, what was the other part of the question? Sorry, Ed.
Is it true that no respectable biologist has ever used the theory of recapitulation?
Well, it was respectable for a time until it was disproved.